Hi guys, welcome back to We Should Talk, a pop culture interview series from In the Know. I'm your host, Gibson Johns, and today on the podcast we have Andi Dorfman, who you know as the Bachelorette. She was the Bachelorette 9 years ago, so she has lived a lot of life since then. But she is running the United Airlines New York City Half Marathon later this month with her fiancé Blaine, with New York Roadrunners. And so I figured, why not take this up as an opportunity to catch up with her. Andi is definitely one of my favorite Bachelorettes ever. I don't even watch the show anymore, but I watched it for a while. And Andi's season was definitely a highlight, and I just love her. I think that after the show, she's written 2 books and about, embracing single life, trying to erase some of the stigma around being single as a woman in your 30s. And I just love the approach that she took to life after the show. I think she, as we talked about a little bit in this interview, she was a star of that show at a good time, sort of before the really intense sort of Instagram centric person started joining and being cast. She sort of hit it a little bit before that, and I think it was really good timing for her. It obviously didn't work out for her, but I think that it's part of her experience. And so we talked a little bit about how she looks back at that and kind of how her relationship to the show has changed over the years. But we didn't dwell on the Bachelorette because it's been so long. But again, I think she's one of the best Bachelorettes we've ever had, and it was really fun to check in with her, hear about her newly engaged life, living in South Carolina now. She lived in New York, LA, and now South Carolina. And she just seems like she's in such a great place. She's writing a 3rd book about this latest chapter of her life, which is really exciting. And yeah, she's just so great, so fun to talk to. And if you are in Bachelor Nation, if you used to watch The Bachelor, you'll enjoy this interview. It's a really great check-in with Andi. And enjoy the interview with Andi Dorfman. And please rate, review, and subscribe to We Should Talk on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so we are here with Andi Dorfman ahead of her running the New York Half Marathon, the United Airlines Half Marathon. Andi, thanks for being here. How are you feeling?
Thank you for having me. I'm feeling good, feeling ready, kind of.
I know you famously run the full marathon before. So how does it feel like you can be a little bit less intense with the training? Like what, or do you feel a little bit like, how do you feel kind of compared to that first experience?
Oh, for sure. I feel like I have to only do half as much, which is great. After running LA Marathon, my second marathon, I was like, I don't know if I love the marathons that much anymore. And I haven't done a half yet, surprisingly, because I was supposed to do the United half in 2020, but obviously COVID.
Right.
And so this is my first time doing a half, which I'm excited about. Training's definitely been a little easier, which is nice. Like we're busy. I don't have the same amount of time that I did when I trained for New York. So it's good. I feel like it's a great like balance of still challenging myself and staying fit, but also not having it be every single second of my life.
Right. And the New York Roadrunners is what is the organization that organizes this, and you've worked
Yeah.
with them before. Can you
Yes,
speak
they're
a
the
little bit about
best.
that and your relationship to them?
Yeah, it's funny because they kind of found me before the marathon. I had been running a lot in New York, and they had reached out to me and asked if I wanted to run the New York City Marathon, and I'm like, no, I'm good. I like run at sunset, like to the bar with my
Right.
girlfriends. I was like, I don't think I could do 26. And then they asked one more time. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just do it and try it. And they gave me a coach, Roberto, who everyone that follows me knows about. And we just became like best buds. He was exactly what I needed at that time. He pushed me, but he was also a friend. And so we obviously had such a close relationship. And I just found out actually today that he's going to run the half with us. So
Oh,
I like am even
awesome.
more excited. Yeah. And Blaine knows him. We like meet for drinks when we're in New York at times. And so I'm really pumped. That relationship is obviously super special to me. And I'm excited to get to run again with him.
Yeah,
I
that's
haven't
so
run since the
fun.
marathon with him.
That is so fun. And you're running it with Blaine,
Yeah.
correct? Why did you guys decide
Yep.
to do this together?
I think it's just been like a great way to like spend time together. He's really into fitness. Obviously, we're both trying to get in shape for the wedding. So this was a great opportunity to be like, okay, if we train for this, we're probably going to get, a little shredded for the wedding.
Love
So
that.
it's like 2 birds, one stone there. And it's fun. Like we actually enjoy doing it together. It's a good way to spend time with someone. You're not on
Hmm.
your phone. You don't have a lot of distractions. It's just a great way to have one-on-one time, either with a friend or your partner.
Definitely. And my brother ran the New York Marathon in the fall, and that was the first time I had really sort of like gone out and watched it, done the whole day, and
It's
I
amazing.
knew what it was, but you don't really know what the vibe is sort of until you experience that. And it's so special to
Mhm.
seeing so many people in New York come out, and the energy is just like no other. And it really, I mean, he said that's sort of what got him through and got him sort of like past some of the biggest hurdles during that race. Can you describe some of that feeling? Because you obviously experienced that when you're in the full marathon, and you're probably going to experience some of that in this half
Yeah.
marathon as well.
Yeah, I mean, New York obviously is just a special place to run the race. Obviously, I've run in LA, and no offense to LA, but like nothing beats New York City. It is like, how can I describe it? It's like seeing the best of the city in one day. Like everyone comes out, everyone's so supportive, they're cheering, and you also get to see the entire city. Like you go for the marathon through every single borough, and
Right.
to run across the bridges with nobody on them, and to like that was a really like I can get chills even thinking about it. Running across the bridge that no one's on in the middle of New York City,
He
like
said that
it's
was the
crazy.
hardest
And the
part. He said
sheer
that was the hardest part because there's nobody
oh,
cheering on the bridges.
I know, but it's like kind of this weird peace moment. I remember like vividly, like it's just very peaceful in a certain way, and you're just seeing the city in a different light. I mean, I lived there at the time I did the marathon, and I still felt like I saw the city and its people in such a different way. And then for the half marathon, we're gonna run through Times Square, so they closed Times Square. Like,
Wow, that's
I mean, that's
cool.
just yeah, it's just how special is that? I mean, you don't really get that anytime. So yeah, there is definitely something special about New York. The people and just seeing the city on foot that way is just you can't replicate it.
That's like the only way I'd want to go be in Times Square. I stay away from Times Square as much as
Oh, I know,
possible.
I know.
That's a good
Yeah.
way. That's a good excuse to actually go there.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun for me to also show Blaine that side of it because obviously he's been to New York with me plenty, but to see it in that light, I'm actually like more excited for him to experience that because, like I said, there's just nothing like experiencing a race in New York, and so
Right.
I'm really pumped for him to get to experience that as well.
And obviously, this race is happening in your old stomping grounds of New York. You've
Hmm.
since lived in LA and now South Carolina. And you've been back, I'm sure, a million times, but like,
Yeah.
what do you miss most about your life in New York? And when you come back, sort of, what does it give? Like, what does the energy give you? What does being back in New York City give you? Because there's something
Yeah.
revitalizing about stepping foot back in Manhattan.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I miss everything about New York. Like you're so happy there. Not to say I'm not happy here, I'm happy anywhere, but there's a different level of excitement. And I just want to do everything there. I just feel like the most tired and the most energized at the same time when I'm in New York.
What are the things that you like have to do when you're here?
Well, obviously pizza, like that's a given. I never leave New York without having some pizza. I still love running Central Park. Like it brings back so many memories to me. And honestly, just like walking around, I walk miles and miles in New York, and
Same.
there's just it's like being in a foreign city to me, which is fun because I'm seeing new things and I'm getting to explore like I did when I first lived there. Because so much of it has changed in 3 years that I've been gone. So it's been fun to just walk around and I just explore.
hmm And so you live in South Carolina now, which is a big change from New York and LA.
Yeah.
What has that been like for you? I mean, does it feel like, I mean, obviously you're with Blaine, so you're extremely happy in a relationship, but just
Yeah.
like location wise and lifestyle wise, like what what has the adjustment been like for you? And is it a nice change? I'm sure it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. I'm from the South originally. I grew up born and raised in Georgia, but I haven't lived there since I did the show. So for a while, and even I went away to school. So I didn't like spend a ton of time there, but I will say like life is easier here in a good way. Like
hmm
there's little things that I realize, like whether it's, going to the DMV and people actually being nice to you, or, people holding the door open for you and you're returning a bunch of packages. The people here like make the quality of life really nice. It's a nice, easy life. And also, I love South Carolina. Like, we dip down to Charleston all the time. It's
Uh,
one of our favorite cities. The coast down there, like, we love it. And it's only a couple hours away. So it's great. And also, I'm close to my family, which is really nice.
yeah, that was gonna be my next question. Is it also you're so close to Atlanta where your parents are, and that must feel nice, especially as you start to build a life with Blaine and possibly have a family. Like that must feel pretty nice to have them so close to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna need my mom to babysit our kids for sure. So that's gonna be nice. She always jokes, she's like, I'm just glad you're on the same time zone, which it is nice. Being 2 hours away from my parents at this stage in my life. Like I loved being far away at times, whether it was school or whether it was New York, California. But I think at this stage in my life, it's gonna be really nice to have them so close.
Definitely. So you mentioned the wedding and preparing for the wedding
Mhm.
and shredded for the wedding through this training and the race.
Yeah.
You got engaged last March. It's been a year. What is, tell me the latest updates on the wedding. What are you comfortable or willing to share about your wedding? Because there are a lot of people that are very excited about it.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. I can share what I know, which is not a ton because Blaine has definitely taken the reins on planning the wedding. I was like, I just don't feel like doing that. And so every morning I wake up, there's literally 5 or 10 emails between him and our planner, which is a dream, literally a dream.
Hands off.
Yeah, I was like, I won't even complain. I'm happy to just show up. I'm very excited for the wedding dresses, which I'm doing in New York. Gives me a little excuse to pop up there for fittings and
Yes.
whatnot. Yeah, I was actually just there last week, and Mark Ingram, who's like legendary atelier in New York, is doing a custom dress. So we were like cutting the muslin and designing it
Love
all,
it.
and that has just been like a pinch me type of moment for sure.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm ready. It's kind of like it's very surreal to me, I'll be 36 years old and not that like I lived to get married, but it's like, oh, this is what it all came down to, huh?
Right.
This is, where everything led me. Like I think that's a very surreal feeling and it'll be a surreal moment too, walking down the aisle like, okay, so all of that led me here.
Right, right. And you posted on Instagram, I think, relatively recently about how like you two had met 15 years ago or something, and then you reconnected, and that's when you started to you started a relationship. And I love the idea of a reconnection like that. I think that is so, I don't know. I think that there's kind of a romance to that, and just sort of like you came into each other's lives, but then it wasn't the right time, and then you came back into each
Yeah.
other's lives. Can you elaborate a little bit on that story? Because I think it's something that it's kind of a hopeful thing, I think, for people that have been following your journey specifically too.
Yeah, I mean, definitely fate. Like I met Blaine when I was probably 18 years old, I think. He was playing baseball. One of his teammates was one of my best friends that I grew up with, like all through childhood. And there was a 4th of July party, and he brought all the boys down, and Blaine was one of those guys, and we met. And when I tell you I did not talk to him for 15 years, like nothing, did not talk for 15 years. There was no like back and forth. This wasn't like, hold on, you got this. No, I lived my life. He lived his life. And then I guess now it'd be 2 summers ago. So like 15 years after, literally, he was in Italy at a wedding. I was in Italy vacationing, and he DM'd me and was like, hey, are you still in Italy? I'm like, yeah. He was like, cool, I'm going to take you out for drinks. I was like, okay, well, I'm with my girlfriend, so you have to take her out too. He's like, no problem. And yeah, we met. And then like, it's funny because it's not like, oh, we were in a relationship immediately, but we were like, let's hang out again after Italy. And then just slowly we were hanging out more and more. And a lot of people will ask, like, oh, is there that one moment where you knew he was the one? I'm like, honestly, no, there just was never a moment that he wasn't the one. But yeah, I mean, it is definitely like when I repeat it back like that, definitely like a fairy tale. But I also don't want to sell the fairy tale that, doesn't exist. It's just by happenstance that like we ran into each other. And I will say, like, for everything that I had been through, like in the public eye, on television, writing books, to have someone that was like from my past, I think really like hit home for me and made me that much more comfortable. And I knew that I could like be my actual self because someone that had met me before I had done all this was still in my life or was now back in my life. So that was a really cool aspect of it to me. It's just like there was almost like an inherent trust there.
Yeah, that must be really comforting. And I love that,
Mhm.
like, in that story, there's sort of like there is sort of like a fairy tale romance to it of the reconnection, but also like there's a very modern element of it, him just like DMing you and just like kind of seeing if you want to hang out again. And I think that there's something in that story for a lot of people. And I don't think you're selling a fairy tale necessarily, but I don't
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. We didn't like see each other and we're like, that's the
Right.
one. Here he's back in my life. It just was like, okay, this is cool. Like no expectations. And yeah, it just worked out. I mean, timing is everything. I feel like, at 18, obviously that was not going to happen, but also, in my 20s. And I see that even in wedding planning, honestly, like the wedding that I'm planning it or that Blaine's planning at age 36 is so far different than the wedding I thought I'd plan in my
Mm.
20s.
Yeah, totally. And I think also what makes hearing your story, and again, somebody who's, been there since you were on the show, and since then, I think, I mean, you've written 2 books. You've been so celebratory about being single and finding yourself in the past, 5 or 8 years or however long it's been. And I love that. I just love that you really celebrated that as a single person who's, I think, especially if you like from city life, it's like that's such a common kind of story, I think, for people. And
Mm-hmm.
I loved I just want to read a little bit of the post that you posted, like, I think it was last week, where you said,
Yeah.
you realize everyone has a different path and different timing. And ultimately, you've got 2 options: think you're not good enough and get down on yourself, or dance on tables and relish the moment you are in. And I think that is such a beautiful message to send to people. And I'm curious, when did you realize that for yourself, that there were those 2 options and that you should take that latter option?
I think I really realized it in myself when I stopped caring what society thought, or what society thought I should or shouldn't be doing in terms of my age and, my relationship status. Obviously, I come from the South. Southerners tend to get married younger, but that was not my path. And so as soon as I kind of just was like, I'm going to live my life. I'm here in the city. New York City helped a lot with that because, like you said, women tend to be a lot older before they get into serious relationships. There's a lot more, like, not that the South isn't career driven, but it's just a different career drive in New York. Cause I mean, you got to make it,
Right.
like
Totally.
everyone is hustling just to pay the expensive rent. So I feel like New York definitely helped me with that. And like, I would always suggest somebody that's single, that's not happy where they are, move to New York. It'll be the best experience of your life. And it makes you forget a lot of those insecurities that you have. And also, I think just going through other things in life, you're like, I don't need to worry about relationships. Like, COVID obviously was a big factor of that, of just like trying to get through it all and be healthy and, make sure that everyone around me was taken care of. And you're just like, okay, I'm good. Like I got to create my life for myself, whether that's with a guy, whether that's with a certain job, whether it's running, whether it's, anything, everything to me, I want to weave into happiness.
Mm, I love that. I love that. And so when I was doing research for this interview, Andy, some site, I think it's like literally bachelornation.com, which didn't even realize existed, but it's been keeping tabs on your life since then. And there was some post that was like, 9 years
Oh
ago
Lord.
this week, Andy was announced as the Bachelorette. And I think that was literally this week.
Oh my gosh, is that what it's
I
been?
think so. And
That would make sense.
I guess, like, my question for you about that is, like, do you feel like that Andy is almost like not a different person, but how do you reflect back to the Andy that existed 9 or 10 years ago? And what would you tell that person, considering where you are now?
Oh my gosh, great question. I mean, I don't think I'm different as a person necessarily. I think age obviously has a lot to do with it. I think when I was in my 20s, and especially, doing the Bachelorette, I felt like I really needed to like be strong and almost bossy in order to prove like my strength and confidence. And I realized that definitely does not need to be something in my life. Like I don't need to be in charge and in control of everything. And that's definitely kind of like settled me down a little bit. I'm trying to think, like, I mean, it's almost hard to even remember those days. Yeah, I mean, it feels like a whirlwind and all of that. But I think I'd probably just tell myself, which is easy to say now, but tell myself back then, like, just hold on, like, enjoy the ride, hang on, like, it's all going to work out in the end. Especially if you keep the whole vibe of just being happy in your life, like, you're destined to be happy if that's what you focus on. And so I would just say, just hold on to the wild ride and soak it up. And I feel like I did soak it up for the most part. Like, I said yes to everything. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. And now, especially being in South Carolina, actually, to kind of make it full circle, I feel like, and getting married and, wanting to start a family, I feel like I've done a lot in my life. I feel
You
very
have.
like content. And I feel like I have a lot of experience good and bad, that like now I get to share with my family
Mm.
and teach my kids one day and encourage them, because I lived that life for better or worse, like encourage them to go out and do the same thing.
Hmm.
And, look where it led me. Like I'm
Yeah.
very fortunate with Blaine because he's like the absolute best. But yeah, look where it led me.
I
So
love that. And I want to say like the qualities that you talked about sort of maybe using to overcompensate a little bit back then, those are
mhm.
qualities that, I mean, at least for me, like I loved those qualities about you. I loved your assertiveness and how strong you were and who you are. And I think that's why you've continued to maintain such a big following and people who are so invested in your life because they love those qualities about you. And I'm glad that you've maintained that.
Yeah.
I guess I'm wondering, I don't really want to get into like nitty gritty of Bachelor and all that because I don't even watch the show anymore. But I would just love to know like how your relationship to that world has evolved and changed over the years. How much was there a moment where you felt pressure to stay really involved? Like, and how did you get over that? Like, just talk to me through some of those moments because
Sure.
I'm sure it's kind of a wild ride post show.
Yeah, I definitely remember feeling like internal pressure to stay involved because I think a lot of post Bachelor and Bachelorette at the time that I did it had to do with social media and following and relevancy. And in order to stay relevant, you had to still be in the world or doing the podcast or giving
Yeah,
interviews. And I think honestly, for me, the turning point was the books. That was like my separation from it, and not in a bad way, but just I don't want to be the person that is holding on to something that is now 9 years ago because I want to evolve. I want to have different things. And so the books, I think writing those two books really helped with that of just transitioning into life. I think also New York City helped me with that a lot. Like, you're kind of out of that world of just Bachelor Nation, which, I love Bachelor Nation. Like I still see some of my friendships that came from there being like some of the most important friendships in my life. There's a lot of people that'll be at my wedding. So there's a lot of takeaways from the show in terms of that. But I think for me personally, I just had to kind of separate from that being my entire identity. And also, I had a great time on the show, but the result obviously wasn't all this happiness. And so I think that made it a little easier to kind of move along. And again, I don't want to be completely defined by a show and a relationship that didn't work out.
yeah, I would agree with you on the books too. I think the books,
Mhm.
I think inherently, and one of the reasons why I have stopped with the show is that I think that it was pushing this sort of cookie cutter idea of what happiness and finding your fairy tale looks like. And I think
Yeah.
that the books inherently pushed against that. And I really respected that when you wrote those books because
Yeah.
that's not easy to kind of reject some of that, I think. And
Yeah.
that's kind of owning your own story again. And I think that was really cool of you to do.
Yeah. And I think the show's changed too. Like I will say, I've always spoken so highly of the show. Like I had the best time. I mean, I traveled, I learned so much about myself. Like it was an amazing opportunity. I
Of
still
course.
sometimes like can't believe I did it. Like it's crazy. Like it's crazy that my life was like that. But yeah, I do. I agree with you. I think it's changed a little bit. Obviously, a lot more for ratings. I think the social media aspect has kind of changed the type of people that go on it. So I'm thankful for when I did it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm good leaving it, how I left it. I
totally.
feel good about it.
Yeah, good. And so in the past several years, like how do you what is your day to day like, or what do you? Because I know you have endorphins, which is your workout app and
Mhm.
community, sort of based off your running experience. And what are some of the other things that you are wanting to pursue or wanting to sort of redefine some of your life with?
Yeah. Well, first, I mean, just in the present, it's like building a new life. I
Yeah,
feel like every time I've moved, you have to really build a new life. And now I'm building it with someone else, obviously getting married, obviously building a house together. But I am definitely doing a third book. It's time. Yeah.
it's
Everyone's like, where's the
time.
third book? And I talk about pressure. I always felt this like internal pressure. And I had been working on it for like during COVID, a couple years before even. And there just wasn't that ending. I couldn't see the full picture of it, and it was preventing me from continuing writing. And now I feel like I'm at a spot where I see the full picture, and it changes my vantage point. It changes my viewpoint on the past when you have that full picture. I still always like journal, so like those moments in time are still there, but I think you can figure out what's more integral in your life when you have the ending. So I'm excited for that. I'm going to take this year to definitely work on that and hopefully get it out next year. Kind of goes back to the single life too, is like, here's the ending. And I don't want to just focus on like, oh, happily ever after. Cause like, that's the end. We get it. Not the end of my life, but the end of that chapter, we get it. But I think the steps leading up to that are something that could be really beneficial to share with people.
Definitely. And I think you called it, are you referring it to chapter 3? Are you referring to this part of your life as chapter 3? Is that sort of?
Yeah, I guess it's like chapter 3 and beyond. I feel like there's a lot of mini chapters.
Yeah, of course,
in there as well. Yeah.
But it makes sense to sort of document this as sort of kind of a holistic moment for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I didn't know that this would come or if it would come when. And so here we are. And it feels like the right time, the right headspace to write it. So I'm really pumped for the third book. I hope everyone else will be too.
They will be. Well, Andi, I mean, I think we have two or 3 weeks until this half marathon, the United Airlines half marathon in New York. I mean, what do you train intensely in these last 2 weeks, or do you kind of settle down with it? How are you preparing in these final days?
Yeah, no, the last week is the best because you like taper off and you basically do nothing except some light runs. I mean, I'll be honest, like I'm not at the pace that I ran the New York Marathon at, which was crazy, but that was my entire life. That's what I did like every single day. In hindsight, I'm like, wow, that's why I was so fast. So I don't have that expectation. We're busy, but we have been training. We just did like our 9-mile run yesterday, and then we'll probably do like one more long run, probably 7 miles or so. And then just have fresh legs and enjoy it. Like I'm definitely going to enjoy it. We have no set time.
It's fun. Yeah.
Just finding out that Roberto is going to run with me. Like I'm so pumped. It's going to be that much more fun. And the marathon I was very locked in and I was very, very intense about it. And I wouldn't change that. It was that time of my life. And this one, I think I want to enjoy the surroundings of New York and the people a little more.
I think that those two approaches are kind of indicative of where you are right now in your life and where you were then. And I think that's kind of cool,
So true. Yeah, that is very true. Actually, I didn't think about that till just now.
Well, I love that for you, Andi. Well, this was so much fun talking to you and catching up with you. You seem like you're in such an amazing place, and that warms my heart for sure. So
thank you. I appreciate that actually very much.
Yeah, of course. And anyway, hopefully we talk soon, and good luck in the half marathon.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to We Should Talk. I hope you enjoyed the interview. You can find out more about In the Know at intheknow.com. You can follow me, Gibson John, at Gibsonoma on Twitter and Instagram. And you can listen to all of our interviews, past and future, by searching We Should Talk wherever you get your podcasts. Hope to see you next time.